Hello everyone. Let's start today with the revision of our chapter, that is sectors of the Indian economy. Now firstly in this chapter we discussed about the sectors of Indian economy, that is divided into three sectors, that is primary, secondary and the tertiary sector. If we talk about the primary sector first, so when we produce a good by exploiting the natural resources and produce raw material, it is an activity that is considered under primary sector. For example, if we talk about agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry, etc., these all activities come under primary sector. This sector, because most of the agricultural activities are done under this sector, hence this sector is also known as agriculture and related sector. Let's come on to the secondary sector. Basically, all the activities in which the natural products are changed into other forms by manufacturing into the factories that are associated with the industrial activities. Basically, all the manufacturing activities and the industrial related activities are covered under this secondary sector. For example, let's take the example of cotton fiber. So, using the cotton fiber that is from plants, so we spin yarn and weave cloth, etc. So spinning of yarn and weaving of cloth are the activities of the secondary sector. So it means taking of the raw material and changing into the final product or manufacturing it into the factory is the activity of the secondary sector. This sector also gradually became associated with different kinds of industries that have actually come up, and that is why it is also called as industrial sector. Now, what is actually GDP? GDP is adding the sum of all the three sector, and the full form of GDP is gross domestic product. GDP basically signifies, or the gross domestic product gives us or shows us how big the economy is. Now let's come on to the tertiary sector, that is the third sector. Now tertiary sector includes all the activities that may not include the production of goods, but they are an aid and support for the production process. For example, the goods that are produced in the primary and the secondary sector actually need to be transported by the trucks or trains, and then they need to be sold in the wholesale or retail shops, right? So the transportation of the products by trucks or train is kind of a service that is provided by the tertiary sector. So apart from the providing services to the secondary and the primary sector, the certain activities that are also included in the tertiary sector is to generate services rather than goods, right? So for example, teaching and more services like that are included in the tertiary sector. Now, the next important part of the chapter is that why the importance of tertiary sector is growing so much. So, for example, in any country, there are several services that are required. For example, hospitals are required, educational institutions are required, telegraph services are important, police stations are required for the protection of the people. So, the development of agriculture and industry, that is the primary and the secondary sector, they actually lead to the development of services like transport, storage, and trade. So, all the services that are being required by the primary and the secondary sector are being provided by the tertiary sector. So due to the demand in the income levels, there is a rise in the demand for more services. More the income level increases, more the requirements of services increases. So the new services that are based on information and technology and communication, they have also increased over the years, and hence they have become more important and essential. So because of all these factors, there is the rise in the importance of tertiary sector, because there is rise in the need and demand for more and more services. So now let's talk about the underemployment or disguised unemployment. This situation is when there are more people working on an area, or where there are less people required and more people working are on that area. So this is called as the underemployment or the disguised unemployment. For example, let's say in a field there are 9 people required, and on that field there are 12 people are working there. That means 3 people are extra and they are underemployed or they are disguisedly unemployed. So we'll be discussing it in two situations, that is in rural areas as well as in urban areas. So if in rural areas we talk about, the all family members are there that work in the same field, right? So this means that even if we remove a lot of people from the agriculture sector and provide them work somewhere else, the agriculture production will not be affected because all the family members are there working on the same field. If we give job to few of them somewhere else in the city or somewhere else in an industry, so the agriculture production will not be affected. Now let's move on and we'll be talking about the urban areas. So there are thousands of casual workers in the service sector who actually search for daily employment, right? So many of them don't find work every day and they're not employed on daily basis. But what happened is there are many others, like for example rickshaw pullers or cart pullers on the street that are selling something, right? So by this they're actually spending their whole day by working, and also their earning is very little. So this means they are underemployed. Now the division of sectors is also into organized and unorganized sectors, right? So firstly we'll be talking about the organized sector. So in the organized sectors, there are terms of employment that is regular. The institutions or the companies follow rules and regulations of Factory Act, Minimum Wages Act, Gratuity Act, etc. that are being laid down by the government. There, in the organized sector, employees are registered with the government, security of work is there, working hours are fixed, and if they work more, they are paid extra salary that is called as overtime. So they also get benefits like they have paid leaves, they have payment during holidays, and they have provident fund, gratuity, etc. Also apart from that, they have certain other benefits also, for example medical benefits, drinking water facility at the work area, and very importantly safe working environment. Whereas it is the opposite in the case of unorganized sector. So in the case of unorganized sector, these are actually small scattered units outside the control of the government, and they don't even follow the rules and the regulations that are being laid down by the government. So jobs are there in the unorganized sector that are low paid and are often not regular. No security of work or job is there. No overtime and paid leaves and holidays or leave during sickness are there. And also sometimes when the workers take sickness leaves, even they have to lose their jobs. So the employment is not secure and they may told to leave at any time, and lot of them are employed on their own and they're doing small jobs. So it means that the organized sector is better than the unorganized sector. Now, how to actually protect the workers in the unorganized sector? So in rural areas, in urban areas, and we'll be talking about the SC and the STs, that is scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. Now, in case of rural areas, what happened is there are vulnerable people who are landless agriculture laborers or small or marginal farmers. There are sharecroppers and earthen artisans as well. For example, weavers and carpenters. Those are included in the vulnerable group. Now, there are nearly 80% rural households that are actually marginal or small farmers. So they can be supported by adequate facilities for timely delivery of needs of agricultural inputs, etc. Now, in case of urban areas, it actually comprises of the workers who are working in small scale factories or industries. Then there are the casual workers, trade, transport, vendors, head load workers, garment makers, rag pickers, etc. The government actually need to support them by providing them raw material and marketing of output, etc. Now, coming on to the SCs and the STs, that is scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. So, the majority of the workers from the SCs and the STs or the other backward classes or the communities are working in the unorganized sectors. So, besides irregular and low paid work, they face social discrimination also. So for this, the government should protect and support them, and when they need actually, and the government should support them by providing them economic and social development. Now, on the basis of ownership, the sectors are divided into public and the private sectors. So, in the public sector, basically, the government owns most of the assets and provides all the services. For example, railways, post office, and certain activities for social benefits. And the government raises money through taxes and other ways to meet the expenses or to meet the needs and provide services to the people. Now, the government also provides subsidies and bear the part of the cost to support the industries. And it is also the work of the government to spend money on providing health and educational facilities to the public. Now let's talk about the private sector. Basically, in private sector, the ownership of assets and the delivery of services is in the hands of the private individuals. For example, Tata Iron and Steel Company of Reliance Industries is one example. Now they're guided by motive to earn actually profits, and to get services, we have to pay money to them. And they're also many a times unable to provide several things or services that are being required by the people at reasonable prices. So, the value of goods and the services in the three sectors are calculated and then added up. Now, the economist actually suggests that the value of the goods and the services should be used rather than adding up the actual numbers. For example, if you talk about a farmer is growing cotton and selling it to the textile industry. Now, the industry makes it into a shirt and then adds buttons and threads to it and sells it at a higher rate. Now, here comes, while calculation, there are certain goods that are called as intermediate goods and there are certain goods that are called as final goods. So the intermediate goods are that are being used in the process, and the final good is the product that is finally prepared. So while calculating and adding the value of the goods and services, we should not add intermediate goods. We should be adding only the final products. There are certain government policies to promote the employment. Here we are talking about one example where banks can provide loan to construct wells and to irrigate their lands. Then what happens is the dam construction will also provide employment opportunities, as well as it will provide irrigation facilities to the farmers. Now, after that, better rural roads and more transportation facilities to be provided to the farmers so that they can sell their crops in the market. On the credit of local banks or the inputs like seeds, fertilizers, agricultural equipment, and pump can be bought by them. Now, the governments can promote and locate industries in the semi rural areas to generate more employment. So, mills like a dal mill or cold storage, honey collection centers, processing of vegetables, etc. Now, more schools should be opened to lead employment to teachers, to builders, to peons, and other staff members. So, for improving the health situation, more and more doctors, nurses, and health workers are also needed to work in the rural areas. Now, the employment can also be generated in tourism area, regional craft industry, or new services like IT. Now, the work of the central government in India is making a law, that is the implementation of the right to work in 200 districts of India and then to 130. This scheme is called as the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act of 2005. In this, all those who are able to work or are in the need of work are guaranteed 100 days of employment by the government. So if the government fails to provide employment, it will give unemployment allowances to the people. So children, that's all for today. Today in this video, we revised the whole chapter, that is the sectors of the Indian economy. We'll come back with the next video, with the next chapter. Till then, thank you so much.